Hey guys, what's good? It's Ilsun4K, and today we're going to conduct a little experiment in the namesake of RAM. See, when I first bought my setup, much like I didn't need to have, I went and got 64 gigabytes of RAM. But there was a little bit of a trade-off. Because of the 10900K I bought, which I didn't have to deal with the scalper, I was okay. But once I got to the point of having to get the 3090 and I had to wait a whole month and pay some greasy-ass scalper a pretty good amount over MSRP, I realized I had to cheap out somewhere, and that was unfortunately in the RAM speed. Now, my RAM is 64 gigabytes of RAM, but it's at 2600 megahertz because I just couldn't swing, like I said, the big deal. What I can do now, though, is I actually went and purchased G.Skill Trident 64 gigabytes of RAM at 4000 megahertz. And of course, you know what that means. Comparison video. So we're going to do a comparison video right now of me playing Resident Evil 8 Village at the fish fight of Dr. Maru, I can't remember his name. All I know is it's a very, very GPU intensive scene, and when I played it, it was the first time I ever played it from 2600 to 4000 megahertz RAM, and it ended up being, you know, quite a difference that you'll see later on in the video. But right now, let's check that out. 64 gigabytes, 2600 megahertz of RAM. Most gamers recommend 3600 as the, the new industry normal. Anything above that is much unneeded. So the 4000 I went wasn't needed. But this is 2600 megahertz of RAM at 64 gigabytes playing Resident Evil 8 Village on completely 4K maxed out settings. Let's see what happens.
Call myself a big one. Need to get out of here!
Well guys, as you could see, despite being under the industry standard of 3600 megahertz RAM to handle most games at 4K today, the 2600 megahertz did a pretty good job at staying right in the 50s. We were in the 60s a little bit, but it dipped mostly into the 50s, and I want to say that's where I'd put its average easily. You can watch the full minute clip again and see how it worked out. Again, that's really impressive for something that's on 4K maxed out settings all the way, pushing that 10900K, and that GPU that I both have overclocked pretty hard. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go watch the video of us at 4000 megahertz speed with 64 gigabytes RAM playing the same scene and watching what happens with the frames per second and seeing if we get a better average. Some people say it doesn't matter, others say it does, but we'll take a look and find out right now.
Caught myself a big one. Need to get out of here!
So, as you can see, 64 gigabytes of RAM at 4000 megahertz actually had substantial improvements. For the most part, we stayed in the 60s, and that was more or less the average where it was, occasionally dipping into the mid-50s once in a while, but staying more to the low to mid-60s with the double RAM speed. And I attribute that not only to the fact that it's faster RAM, but it's nearly double the speed of the original 2600 megahertz RAM I had in there. No, you gotta figure, if I hadn't doubled it, would it have been so impressive if I went from, let's say, 3600 megahertz RAM to 4000 megahertz RAM? I couldn't really tell you because I didn't make that drastic of a jump. But if this is any sort of indicator as to what it's like to be past the normal, I can see why 3600 megahertz speed RAM is really the ideal speed for most gaming today, even at maxed out 4K settings on your heavier builds. Honestly, you don't even really need 64 gigabytes of RAM, but I do a lot of rendering on this PC for these videos, and I really like to make sure I have extra beef just for that, even though the 10900K isn't the greatest at rendering. Now, I gotta say, if you're at 3600 megahertz RAM, I wouldn't upgrade. However, if you're below that and you're looking for a good deal, 3600 megahertz is great. Or if you can stumble upon the deal that I stumbled upon, which was actually a Newegg eBay find, if you want to believe that, $600 RAM for $402 delivered. I couldn't argue. I had to take it. Even though I was a little strapped for cash, I don't regret it because, as you can see, things like that make a difference when you're talking about a drastic jump. Again, I totally recommend that to anybody who's in the lower than 3600 RAM speed. Now, moving forward from there, I'd like to say thanks for checking this out, and make sure to like and subscribe at the video below. Also, make sure to check me out, IllSun4K, at Twitch, as I like to stream and play some games on there. But more importantly, I just love making content for you guys. So please, make sure to come and check out all the content, and keep, subscribing so that way you can be notified. I try to come out with a video a week. You know the usual routine. Other than that, take care and have a wonderful day, and keep on gaming, guys.